today I want to address a question that I often get asked, and that is, how do we improvise over chord progressions that contain non-diatonic chords? Now, if you don't know what that terminology means, don't worry, because I'm going to come back to it in a second. But let me just explain why I want to address this question. There are actually several possible answers to it, and it kind of depends on you know, what style you're playing in, what genre you're playing in. So if you were playing in jazz or blues, then those genres have their own way of addressing this question, their own particular ways of addressing this question. But I'm going to look at it from the point of view of kind of pop piano, ballad piano styles, which I know that a lot of you guys are interested in. So let's start off with a scenario. You have heard a song that you really like on YouTube or on the radio or whatever, and you've gone online to find the chord progression. And you found that actually it's a really simple chord progression. It's just 4 chords long, repeated in a loop. That's a really common way that a lot of pop songs are built these days. And the chord progression you've got, the basic 4 chords, goes like this. It's apparently in the key of G major, and we've got the chords G, B flat, C, and back to G. Okay, each for 1 4/4 bar, 4/4 measure, whatever terminology you want to use. Okay, so far so good. We've got that chord progression, and the first thing we can say to ourselves is, okay, so it begins with a G chord and it ends with a G chord, and a reasonable conclusion we can draw there is that it is in the key of G major. Now, if you've watched my improvisation videos before, you'll know that I've often talked about the kind of, the go-to scales for improvisation. If we see a chord progression in the key of G, then our immediate instinct should be to think about the scale of G major and maybe G pentatonic. Yeah, okay. Now those scales would be absolutely fantastic for improvising over a G chord progression, certainly over the chord of G and certainly over the chord of C, because those chords are both natural to the key of G major. They're what we call diatonic chords. They're both built from the notes of the G major scale. The problem we have with this progression, it's not a problem, it's an opportunity, is that we have this non-diatonic chord, B flat. We call it a non-diatonic chord because it's not built from the notes of the diatonic scale of G, in other words, the major scale of G. Rather, it uses 2 notes that aren't in that G major scale. There's the G major scale, okay, and there's the B flat chord. And as you can see, we've got B flat there, but in G major we don't have B flat, we have B natural. And in the B flat chord we also have F natural, but in G major we don't have F natural, we have F sharp. So if we were to use that G major scale to improvise against, in particular that B flat scale, we get a really kind of odd striking sound. That's not to say we couldn't sometimes use it, but it's kind of very jarring. Yeah, what we want to do is try to find a more kind of organic and more natural sounding alternative. And one of the ways we can do that is by looking at using some modes. Now I'll explain exactly what modes are in a second if you're new to the concept, but first of all let me just play through an improvisation on that chord progression so you can kind of get a sense of the kind of sounds palette that I'm working with here. Okay, so those are the kind of sounds that I'm using, and the way I'm creating them is by using modes. Rather than thinking about thinking in terms of the G major scale or the G major pentatonic, I'm thinking about different modes. It's worth saying, and I'll talk about the definition of modes in a second, it's worth saying that I don't have to think about scales there at all, I don't have to think about modes there at all. I could just stick to playing the chord notes. And I will be perfectly safe because all the kind of theory is being done for me by me just sticking to the chords. But I want to be kind of adventurous, I want to add decorations and suspensions, and that means I need a scale that I can pick stuff up from, yeah? But I can't use that G major scale because of the clashes, especially against the B flat, and that's where the modes come in. So let's just think about what modes are, and to do that I just want to pop into C for a second. That's the C major scale, just so we can see this really clearly. Now the C major scale is itself a mode. It has a modal name. It's the Ionian mode, but we very rarely use it because we just talk about the C major scale. And the C major scale, the Ionian mode, is built out of a particular pattern of tones and semitones. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Or, if you're using the US terminology, step, step, half step, 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 half step. Now, when we talk about the modes, all we're doing is talking about scales that are built of different patterns of tones and semitones, of steps and half steps from the regular major scale. And that's all it is. And those modes have subtly different sounds, and they allow us to work with chord progressions more easily if those chord progressions use chords that don't appear naturally in the kind of the major keys based on the major scales, that we're so used to. Now, the two particular modes that I was using there were the mixolydian and the lydian modes. Okay, mixolydian and lydian. Doesn't matter if you can't remember the names. You learn most of this stuff just by playing around on the piano. But just for information, those are the names. The mixolydian mode is exactly the same as the major scale, except instead of playing that natural seventh, we have a flat seventh. Okay? Mixolydian mode. So instead of it being tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, instead at the top here we have tone, semitone, tone. It's just a different pattern of tones and semitones. That's the mixolydian scale. The Lydian scale is the same as the major scale, but it has a raised fourth. Okay? So again, different pattern of tones and semitones. Instead of going tone, tone, semitone, tone, it goes tone, 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 semitone. In fact, it includes the tritone, really important concept in Western music. We don't really have time to dig into that now. So we have the mixolydian mode and the Lydian mode. And in particular, I'm using the G mixolydian for much of my improvisation, yeah. In particular on the chords of G and C, I'm using the G mixolydian. But when I hit that B flat chord, I'm using the B flat Lydian. Okay, so as you can see, it's the same as the regular B flat scale, but with the raised fourth. Okay, and those two scales are reasonably comfortably close to each other, yeah. If I would just use major scales and I were to hit that B flat chord, I could either, stick with the G major scale, sounds a bit weird, or I could jump into a B flat scale, but then I've made a big jump out, as it were, and it's quite difficult to get back from there quickly to an obvious G major sound. Whereas using those modes, which are, and I'm kind of like skipping 50 pages of the music theory textbook to kind of give you this, but those modes are kind of more closely interlinked, it gives a more natural sound. And in particular, it's that F. The F that crops up in the B flat is really what suggests to me that instead of using the G major scale, I should be using the G mixolydian as my basic scale. Okay, so if you look at, let me just play through an improvisation again and look at the notes that I'm playing. Mostly on the G and C chord, we've got G mixolydian, but when I go onto the B flat chord, you will see that just to accommodate that B flat, basically it's the same as the G mixolydian scale, the same notes, but with that B flat rather than the B natural. Okay, let me just play it again and see if you can spot where I'm using the distinctive notes of the particular modes. Okay. Okay, C1 there. Okay, so that's very distinctive. The raised fourth from from the Lydian scale. Okay, and just there I was getting the flat seventh from the mixolydian scale. Okay, so what I suggest you do now is go away and play around with that progression just to get a kind of feel of it. Remember, the important thing about the modes that I've chosen there is that they kind of mesh well together. Yeah, I'm not getting the really kind of the jarring effect of that sharp seventh in the regular G major scale. And I'm also managing to accommodate the B flat in there, okay, by choosing modes which kind of, as I say, have a more natural fit together than if I were trying to fit, you know, a B flat chord against a G major scale, or if I were switching from major scale to major scale and then trying to switch back again, okay. As with so many things, the way to get to grips with this is not necessarily to spend hours and hours learning the theory, but rather to sit down at the piano and play around and kind of experiment. Okay, that's how to do it. And you know, really, you know, I picked up a lot of this when I was a kid, and I actually figured out a lot of the theory first before I even knew the names of the modes. You know, which kind of came as actually I was, you know, as I was doing my kind of A levels and my degree and stuff. So figure it out first. By all means, go and look up all of the modes for a little bit of improvisation. If you go to the Wikipedia page on modes and scroll down and find the modern modes, don't bother about the ancient Greek ones and stuff, you can work out all of the different modes starting on all the different notes. Okay, and that can be handy because you can get a taste of what the different modes sound like. So go away and play around, and we might do some more stuff on modes pretty soon. Okay, there we go. If that was useful, please do consider supporting my Patreon crowdfunding campaign, patreon.com/Bill Hilton, or you might like to buy one of my books. Okay, so here we've been talking about kind of pop piano today, so here are the two books you might find useful: How to Really Play the Piano, the stuff your teacher never taught you, loads of stuff on chords and harmony, things like that. So if all this stuff about chords that I'm talking about is mystifying you, do check out this book. You need to be able to read basic music, but nothing desperately complicated. And if you're interested in pop piano, do check out 7 Studies, which is basically what it is. It's 7 short pieces of piano music. Again, you need to be able to read music, but none of it's massively difficult. They're kind of in graded order, so the first ones are really easy. Together with notes and explanations, and you know how you create this stuff for yourself and how you improvise and all that stuff. So there we go. That's kind of it. I'm a bit down on my videos this month because I had a cold and I was coughing and coughing and coughing. I couldn't really shoot anything. So this is actually the first video of the month, really late in the month. But in a couple of days' time, there's going to be the next in my series of piano for absolute beginners coming out. Okay, so you will be able to see that fairly soon. Okay, hope that was useful. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, do subscribe. Click on the button down there, like the video, share it, follow me on Facebook and Twitter, all the rest of it. I'm pretty easy to find, and I will see you again next time. I hope you enjoyed that.